Welcome on into this week's episode of Digging Deeper. I'm Matt Corey, joined here today by a man that has the second best calves on this podcast. It's Gabe Kasper. Pastor Gabe, how you doing today?
Feeling pretty good to be number 2 in the Cavs in this podcast.
That might be the only thing I have on you. I'm not sure.
You do?
So
Yeah, it's true. Mine are far inferior to yours.
me and John, we got that on you, but that's all right. At least you have friends, Pastor Gabe.
I do have friends. It's true.
I love that your wife did laugh at that in the second
She did.
gathering. Yes.
Yep, that was nice.
Great that she has your back there.
Yeah.
But as you open up your sermon, the movie of the summer was The Odyssey. And as you know, I do my homework for this podcast. So
Yeah.
this past weekend, I went out to go see it late on a Saturday night. Was there at 10:30 watching this 3-hour movie, me and 3 other people in this
Dude.
theater. But hey, it was worth it. Did not fall asleep. I was worried I might, but
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. And we have plenty of things that we can talk about it here. You have even some more notes beyond what you said. Obviously, you mentioned that you thought it was good, but might have been too Christian in certain ways. And you have some thoughts here from Richard Beck on why that might have happened, why it might have had Christian morality put into it.
Yeah. Well, and real quick too, if I may, Matt, you went on a Saturday night at 10:30,
Mhm.
meaning you're not getting out till like
It
1:30.
was, yeah.
And then you're
I've not
not
stayed
home
up that
till
late in
like,
a long time.
I was gonna say, dude, and then you had to work the next day.
Yeah.
Dude, good for you.
Hey, we made it work.
Impressive. It didn't show that you did not
Oh,
sleep the night before. But
yes.
yes, so open talking about how I thought the Odyssey was too Christian, and that's not a critique unique to me.
Right.
So Richard Beck, who's a sort of theologian slash psychologist, I like. He says this. He says the movie is a Christianized version of Homer's poem because the world has been so thoroughly Christianized that the only story Nolan could tell that would morally resonate with audiences is at its
Mm.
core a Christian one, which is essentially the main point that I kind of made in the opening part of my sermon, and I just kind of liked how Beck put it much more succinctly than I did. And then another commentator but I chose to work off the philosopher Sean Illing and kind of his way of doing it. One, because Illing's not a Christian, and I always think it's more interesting to hear
Mm.
that argument come from someone who doesn't believe what we believe, whereas Beck kind of does. And so, he's going to say things that align with us, whereas someone who doesn't, it's pretty interesting when those things line up, right? So
Yeah.
that's why use Sean Illing. But then another person who made this same argument. So you have Beck, you have Sean Illing, and then Freddie DeBoer is a writer who I really like in general. Not a Christian either, but he makes a similar argument, and he says this. In the second half of the film, Nolan imposes a conventional, quote, war is hell storyline onto the film and its protagonist, which I found very safe and frankly a little trite. I am inclined to agree with that as well. I think it's a good example of projecting a fundamentally modern Christian morality onto a story that is enticing in part because it comes from an alien and pre-modern culture and to the detriment of the movie as a work of art. And I actually, again, agree with Freddie. Like, this is where I think the movie would have been better if it had been weirder to us. Like,
Mm.
if you make Odysseus the way he actually is in the Odyssey, where he's like really arrogant and really like vengeful, and that's actually what's celebrated, as opposed to this sort of tortured, conflicted, like that's not what it is. And so it's more interesting to look at the hero the way he was originally portrayed instead of the way we want to understand a hero in the modern West.
Mm. Yeah, that is interesting. And I'll add in that I listen to a couple different TV and movie podcasts, and one of them, people that are definitely not Christians, but they actually liked the sort of war is hell
Hmm.
storyline, and they were like, "Man, this is great. Like, I think this is something that we need to hear in this day and age that we live in now." And it's interesting to hear that as like a Christian morality being interposed within, but also just hearing like non-Christians are like, "Hey, this is like what we want to hear," and I think this is something that we liked.
Well, and it speaks to the fact that, like, in general, for the most part, people in the contemporary West, even if they're not Christians, their morality is Christian. Like it
Mm,
just they like it's inescapable. Actually, it's so totalizing. Most people, that's their basis for morality, and that's where even I had a gal talk to me after worship on Sunday, where she's like, I think Nolan, his critique really in this movie was against Christian nationalism. Like that's what he was going for, which like
Mm.
may have been, but again, any critique of Christian nationalism is using Christian moral categories. Like it all frankly finds its roots back in these same moral categories, which is, if you don't mind, I mean, I made an aside, but
Yeah.
I was going to flesh it out more in my sermon, but I made an aside about that, like people, like I'm not just saying this, like this isn't just some guy, like this is Nietzsche's genealogy of morals, like this is his whole thing, like this, and he hates it, he laments it, like so.
Mm.
What he does in that book is he says like, where do morals come from? And he goes back to civilization and he says like it really came from this aristocratic uh, culture in which the top dogs were the ones who made the rules, and so being proud and being boastful and the strong crushing the weak and elevating yourself, being the ubermensch, like that's what was celebrated. That's bravery, that's courage, that's what it's
Mm.
about. And he's like, and then what does he call Jesus? He has this, like, he hates Jesus because he thinks he's like it. Well, actually, he doesn't even hate Jesus. He hates Jesus's morality because it's the morality of the weak. It's slave morality. He believes in master morality instead of slave morality. And that's Nietzsche's whole thing. Is he demonstrates, that's what genealogy. He gives a genealogy for the morals we got to, and he traces it throughout human history. Um, and he blames Christianity for what he views as a morality that celebrates weakness, that practices humility. He
Mm.
thinks that's bad, right? And so you can make that argument philosophically from the ancient Greeks to now, and how Christianity has fundamentally shifted how people think about morality. Even if they're not Christians, they cannot help it. In the same way, the historian Tom Holland, not Spider-Man, most
Or
recently in
not
his
the Tom Holland in the movie.
Indeed.
Yes.
Who actually, I thought he did a great job. I was very impressed. He was a great actor. Um, but Tom Holland, the historian, his most recent book, Dominion, that's what he does. He traces how this. And again, when he originally wrote it, he wasn't a Christian. I think he would call himself one now, incidentally.
Mm.
But just as a secular historian, he's like, this is a fact. Like he's like, you can't. He's like, and again, he writes not as a Christian. He's like, I'm not a Christian, but my morals are. I can't help this.
Mm.
And so that's just one of the things we see. And he's not the first one to have done that. There's a book called How Christianity Changed the World. There's another, actually, a really accessible book called Who Is This Man by John Ortberg. It's written at a very popular level in which he just traces this same phenomenon. So that's
Mm.
what I was trying to get at, is in this text in
Yeah.
Acts 11, this is really where we see that ripple start to take root, that it's not just this Jewish sect anymore. It's
Mm.
now starting to transform other cultures outside of first, or what we call Second Temple Judaism.
Yeah. And I guess that makes me question. I haven't read the Odyssey in, I don't know, probably 15 plus years, but they talked about the law of Zeus a lot in the movie and how you should treat the lowest people as if it could be a god, and that you should try to treat them like as best as you can and treat them no different than like a king. So is that something that was new to the movie, or is that something that was around back in that time?
Right. So Law of Zeus is in the original Homeric poem. It's in the original
Mhm.
Odyssey. It is nowhere near as frequent as it is in the film.
Right.
And
It
it
might have
is
been the main point of the film, to be
Law
honest.
of Zeus was absolutely the main point
Yeah.
of the film, right?
Yeah.
It does not mean the same thing as it does in the film, right? So they kind of reduce Law of Zeus to meaning essentially the golden rule: love your neighbors, you love yourself.
Mhm.
But also, then you're right, they tie it into, in many ways, the weakest among us, and a
Mhm.
sort of Jesus ethic of the least of these.
Right.
That was not at all. So it's typically Odysseus invokes the law of Zeus because he's a king and they owe him hospitality. Like it's
Mm.
more about, like, it's not entirely rank. Like there is a hospitality in general element to the law of Zeus, but it's a much more reciprocal or transactional thing than it is a, like, no, this is how you should live your life thing. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
it's like,
So in the poem, it's coming more from a position of power than a position of weakness.
right, right. And it's
Gotcha.
like,
And
you
when
should
Jesus
obey the
talks,
law of
it's usually
Zeus
from
so
a point
that
of
he doesn't curse you, as opposed to,
mm,
like,
mhm.
because
Almost
people have inherent dignity. That's not why. It's so that
right.
Zeus doesn't curse you.
Got
So
it.
there's a
Okay.
motivational change as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So they sort of switch the framework on its head, and that's how the Christian morality comes in. Where, I mean, Jesus talks very similarly, where he says that you should be with the least of these and try to treat them well. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, the
I,
whole, like, it may be a God in disguise. I mean, that's the whole Jesus in Matthew 25. Whatever you did
exactly.
for these, you did for me. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Precisely. Okay, yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah,
So, as we're talking about in the sermon here, the Hellenist or the Greeks,
yeah.
you actually have a disclaimer here about how it can be a little bit confusing because we talked about Hellenistic Jews earlier and how just like the differences between Hellenistic Jews and the Greeks we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's super confusing. And so that's why I just dropped it. And I'm like, I'm just going to assume people forgot about the Hellenist from earlier. And they did, because no one remembers sermons, because what I do doesn't matter. So, at any rate, that was a joke. I mean, people don't remember things, but I still think preaching matters because eating breakfast still matters. So, anywho, my joke notwithstanding, yeah. So if people have been following with us in this series, you go back to Acts chapter 4, and you have this issue where the widows are not getting fed. The Hellenist widows are not getting as much food
Hmm.
as the what are they called? The Hebrew widows. So that the
Yeah,
Jew like
right.
so the, and so but the thing is both these groups were ethnically Jewish. So there's people who are ethnically Jewish but culturally Greek. That's the
Hmm.
Hellenists. And then there's people that are ethnically Jewish and culturally Jewish. That's the Hebrews. And the issue was the culturally Greek Jewish believers, widows, were not getting bread, and they were called the Hellenists.
And one of
The,
which was Barnabas, correct?
what's that?
One of which was Barnabas. That was why he was put in a position of power, I believe, was because he was one of the Hellenists.
No.
No?
So Barnabas is prior to that. Barnabas is so actually it's Acts 6 where this happens. Barnabas is Acts 4. This
Mm,
is Barnabas is right before Ananias and Sapphira. So Barnabas is the one who sells his field and gives all he has to the church, whereas
that's right.
Ananias and Sapphira hold back what they have. So he's a
You're right.
baller because he's generous. Stephen is the dude who becomes a deacon, and he was
Yep.
probably a Hellenist, and so is
Got it.
Philip, right? But again, so Hellenists are culturally Greek, ethnically Jewish. The problem is in our text for this past Sunday, Acts 11, the Hellenists that they reach out to, it is just crystal clear from the context. This is talking about people who are ethnically and culturally Greek. Like
Mm.
that's and there's a slight difference in the Greek, but you could it's not enough to be like it means this and it means it. It's not really that much. It is a slightly different tense, but like it wouldn't be enough to make it that obvious. You really have to go based off the context, where it's like you're flowing from the story of Peter and Cornelius, which is all about the Gentiles being brought
Mm.
into the family of God, and right from that, it's actually a little bit of a flashback in which people have fled Jerusalem from the martyrdom from Stephen in Acts chapter 7, right? And then they go to Antioch. But Luke is trying to show, like, look, as Cornelius, this Gentile is coming in. These people who fled Jerusalem are in Antioch now, and they reach out to these other Gentiles, the Greeks. So you have the Roman coming to faith, and now you have the Greek coming to faith.
Mhm.
So that's the idea. That's what's going on. But one of the things I wanted to share was that it's the persecution that broke out in Jerusalem over the martyrdom of Stephen. It was targeted at all the Christians, but it seems like in particular it was targeted at the Hellenists because they couldn't escape. I mean, they couldn't blend in as well because they spoke Greek, right? They maybe dressed Greek, even though they were ethnically Jewish, and so they were the easy targets for the religious authorities to persecute. So they were the ones that spread out. Most of them left, and they
Mm.
were the ones that spread out the quickest and got the furthest away. And so it's interesting then that these Hellenist Jews who are Christians now, they end up in Antioch and are actually able to communicate with these Greeks,
Mm.
right? And so God uses these unique cultural moments and the unique group being oppressed in order to set free people by the power of the gospel through them being able to have a shared language and culture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's God working through his people with the gifts that they have or just in their
Yep,
situation. And you have
exactly.
another note here, sort of along those same lines about the significance of the gospel going to these Greeks.
Yeah, so this is big deal. So last week, again, you'll recall, and actually this will, yeah, it'll tie into some of what I'm going to say later too. But if you'll recall, this is, I'm just going to go into all this, Matt.
Yep.
This goes to like last week, Cornelius comes to faith. He's wasn't ethnically Jewish, but he becomes a Christian. But you'll recall, he was a God-fearer, right? So he knew the Old Testament. He went to synagogue. And then the 2 weeks before that, Pastor Marcus preached on Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. Now that guy's Ethiopian, like he's not Jewish either, But he had a copy of the Old Testament. He had just been to Jerusalem, or he was headed to Jerusalem. Like he is a God-fearer as well. He
Yeah.
knows the Bible, he knows the temple, he knows synagogue. This is the first time with these Greeks, it is really crossing over people who have no idea about the God of the Bible. They don't know Yahweh,
Mhm.
they don't know Moses, they don't know the right, they've never been to synagogue, they don't know the Torah. Like, so these are people just truly pagan. And I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean that's literally what they were.
Yeah.
Um, and like this is really the first time the gospel reaches people who had had no contact with the scriptures. That's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something to think about too, just like these people hadn't even had an opportunity. It's not like they had heard and
Right.
sort of just turned away from the God of the Bible, but they just had no exposure to it yet. And it's significant because that map is growing bigger and bigger of the gospel spreading to people that had no opportunity to hear it before. And
Yep.
that's why it's important that God is using these people and using them within that sent posture that we always talk about as well.
Yep, exactly, exactly. And again, I mean, and these are people who, just a few miles, we know this, just a few miles outside of Antioch. And by the way, Antioch's a very big city. I didn't get time to get into this, but it's the third largest city in the Roman Empire. It was the
Mm,
capital of the eastern half of the Roman Empire. It was a sort of major industrial and military and trading hub. It was part of the Silk Road of the Persian Empire originally,
mm,
and then got taken over, well, by the Greeks and then the Romans. Any rate, but just a few miles outside of Antioch is this massive temple to Apollo, and then also kind of by a connection to his sister Artemis. So a major cult of Artemis as well was there. So these are a deeply religious people, but just not to the true
sure.
God, and yet the gospel comes to them, and that's a really big deal.
Yeah, and we talk about the some of them. You sort of harped on that a little bit there, and how it's not the greatest of the apostles or anything. It's just the people that were there. They
Yep.
put in the work and they found a way to communicate with these people and uh, made a bridge to reach out to them, and that's also significant that these people took it upon themselves and they're like, we want these people to hear about Jesus, and it worked, and many people came to find Jesus through them.
That's right. And I mean, to me, and that's like everything. Like I think especially, I mean, let me just put it this way. In Ann Arbor, last I checked, it's been a few years, but last I checked, it's something like 20% of people go to church regularly, 30% see it as worth doing. 20% actually do it, 30% are like, yeah, it's probably a good thing to do. So that
Mm,
leaves 70% of people in this city that are just like, it just really isn't, who cares? Like whether they're Christian or not, and many of them aren't, but if they're not, whatever, they're like, yeah, whatever's going on a Sunday morning, I'd rather have brunch, right?
right.
What that means then is like, it doesn't matter how good I preach. It doesn't matter how good our music is. The majority of our city does not care. And so the only way we reach them with the gospel
Mm,
is that we see ourselves as being sent, is that people go into their lives where they live, work, and play with the gospel for the sake of the gospel. That's the only way. And so that's why that's such a passion. I mean, not only for me, but for our church. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And talking about our church, you had some words here that you ended up cutting from the sermon, but where you talked about who we are as a church and also who we aren't.
Yeah. Yeah, I did cut this because I was too snarky. So,
Yeah, I figured.
yeah. But I mean, we're church like, I don't know. I just care about the mission of God and being sent. And
Mm,
so I had a little where I just got grumpy and I said, so if you want to be a part of a church that sits around and argues about carpet color and getting what you want, go to a different church. And I guess I'd say that, to be honest, I kind of stand by that. It's a little grumpy to say, but like, if you're a Christian and you just kind of want to like get whatever you want and like be worried about yourself and like just get your needs met and not be on mission, we have too many people. Like, go somewhere else. I need that seat for someone who doesn't know Jesus or for someone who's going to be on mission. Like, that's
mm,
it. Like, I just like, I, and there's someone that'll hold your hand, but like, that's just not going to be us.
right.
And yeah, so
Sounds harsh, but it's a harsh reality, and I think
and it's just
I,
true. Like,
yeah,
yeah. And obviously, there's all sorts of caveats, right? If you've been hurt by the church and you're coming off in a place to breathe, like, we want to be a place where people feel welcomed and loved no matter what.
absolutely.
Right, but we're just not going to be a place that sits around and is like, "What do you want? What do you want?" I'm just going to like, we're just not going to do that. We're going to be on
Mhm,
mission, and we care about reaching the lost.
absolutely. All right. as we know, the gospel's for the Greeks now. We just heard a whole sermon about it. We've been talking about it here for 20 minutes,
Yep.
but we might as well dig into the Greek here a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's zoom in
Oh,
here on verse 23, and I'll go ahead and read that and let you talk about it here and let you get your Greek nerdness on. But it says here, when he, Barnabas, came and saw the grace of God, he was glad, and he exhorted them all to remain faithful to the Lord with steadfast purpose.
yeah. So it's fun. Like that phrase in verse 23, it's gotta see if I can say this right. It's called it's half the reason I didn't do this because it's a really hard word, but a paronomasia. And so a paronomasia is where words that sound alike or look similar are used for a
Mm,
certain rhetorical effect. And so when it says Barnabas came and saw the grace of God, he was glad. The root word for grace in Greek is charis. And so so he saw the chorus of God, and the word for glad is has the same root
mm,
as grace does in Greek, but the form it's in for the word glad is ekare. So you put a prefix on it and you change the suffix, but that car remains the same. And so it's meant to be this like he saw grace and was glad. It's a play on words. That he saw
yeah.
the chorus and was a kare. So probably the best way we could even do it like Latin does it pretty well. So the word for grace in Latin was is gratia. So it's like he saw the gratia and was uh, grateful. It's like that kind of play on words. And so
Mm,
that's Luke's doing that kind of little rhetorical move that Luke does in verse 23 that you can tell really isn't that important, but just kind of fun to highlight and a
yeah.
little
And
literary
I think it
move.
highlights that, I mean, with grace, we should be glad and that it
Yep.
is a reason to rejoice. Yeah.
I mean, and actually to that point, Matt, yes, thank you. Because that is a big deal. Like, I mean, when you look at Jesus in Luke 15, when he gives the great trilogy of parables of the lost sheep and the lost coin and the lost son, the prodigal son, every time, all three of those stories, when the lost come home, party, party, party,
Hmm.
joy, 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 right? And I do think that's super important for us actually, because we can forget that. Because the lost are oftentimes messy. They oftentimes don't know as much as we think they should. They don't behave as well as we think they should. Da 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 da. And it's like, and sure, there's room for discipleship and growth and all that. But the bottom line is, dude, when the lost come home, we celebrate. That's it.
Mm,
That's it. I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So actually, I kind of wish I would have leaned into that more because I mean, the fact, like, think about these dudes who like a week ago had been worshiping Apollo, the god of
Right.
war,
Hmm.
right? They don't know anything about Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount and all that. They're not going to know any of that. They're not going to confess the Apostles' Creed. They don't know any of that.
They might
But they
have been
trust in
reading the
Jesus.
Odyssey.
What's that?
They might have been reading the Odyssey,
Yeah,
to be
honestly, might
honest.
have been reading the Odyssey
I
and
would
been
have been.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, Odysseus is sick. He kills everyone."
Right.
Um, right? And and so their whole world's being flipped, and it's going to take time for them to get all that sorted out. And Barnabas doesn't be like, "Well, you're not perfect yet." He's just
Mm,
glad that they're part of the family. And yeah, again, discipleship matters, sanctification matters, but like it starts in joy, it starts in gladness.
yes. All right. Let's talk about what happens after that verse 23 with our boy, Mr. Encouragement. You have some notes on just what comes into play beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, and I settled in on this for a while in general, but like Barnabas is really impressive. Like he's one of my favorite characters in the New Testament. You got to piece his story together. He's a bit all over, but if you look at his cumulative work, he's just this humble dude who just does the work, and it's not about him. And so,
One of the most
uh,
attractive characters in the New Testament.
that's what our boy James Moffat said. Very good,
Yeah.
Matt.
He must have been a good
Um,
looking guy.
well, I think he meant like moral attraction, but tough to say. Well, who knows what his calves were like?
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, with all that walking, probably
Probably
pretty
quite
good.
good. The amount of walking,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
But actually, I mean, speaking of that, one of the things that I was going to emphasize is like I talked about how he was wise because he went to get Saul/Paul to help him lead this
Hmm.
fledgling church in Antioch, which was a wise move, and that is why he did it. As I think that's the best way to read it. However, we should recognize this would have been no small trip.
Yeah.
Antioch to Tarsus. Um, I mean, it's not that far, but he likely would have taken a ship from Antioch up to Tarsus, sailing across the Mediterranean. So this isn't like, hey, he ran 10 miles and grabbed Paul and they walked back together. This is like, he's like, hey, I'm going to be gone for a couple of months
Hmm.
to get this guy. I got to convince him to come here. We'll be back. Don't worry. I mean, like, this is not a small thing that he did, but he saw the necessity of Paul getting his foot in the door here. And really, and I forgot to mention, I mean, Antioch is called the cradle of Christianity. Because, like, while the church starts in Jerusalem, Antioch is the primary sending hub. So it's like the Jerusalem church is home base, but in terms of the like what's the port that the missionaries are going out from? What's the place where everyone's getting trained and launched? It's predominantly Antioch. Like that's the place where like broader cultural influence, world Christianity, as Moffat calls it, really begins. Uh, is Antioch, and so how incredible that, and then Paul is the missionary to the Gentiles. Like that's what he does, and so how incredible is it that like Barnabas is like, dude, Paul's got to get here. He's got to get
Yeah.
down here. And he does the work to go do it. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
then they stay for a year beyond that and put in the work there too. So, yeah.
Can I add one thing quick, Matt?
Yep. Please.
So one like random anecdote I thought about doing, but I couldn't, I would have forced it in, just because it's funny. But when I was in high school, I would go on these mission trips to Mexico and it'd be like, it was put on by Azusa Pacific University and it'd be kids from all over the country would camp out in this big field. Interestingly enough, Hannah Maxey, our director of operations, would also be on these mission trips. We did not know each other at the time. And I would have been like a senior when she was a freshman, but nevertheless, we were there at the same time, at least at one point. Um, and we're in this giant field, thousands of kids, and it was kind of like a camp. And you'd go out and serve, and then you'd come back. And so it was kind of like camp. So every day there'd be someone who would win the Barnabas Award, and there'd be a guy and a girl, and they called the guy the Barna Dude, and the girl the Barna Babe. So I thought about working that into the sermon, but
Mm.
as you can tell, there's really no good way to do that.
Well, did you ever win it?
No, I was never the Barna Dude. We should
Mm.
ask Ken if she was ever the Barna Babe. But I desperately wanted to be the Barna Dude. I did, however, volunteer to help cook dinner. No, well, it was while dinner was being cooked, but I was actually helping prep breakfast. I cracked maybe 400 eggs into a giant garbage can. It was the best. It was a clean garbage can. It wasn't like
Oh,
it was a brand new one. It was,
okay. Like, wow, that's a interesting way to make an omelet there. But
yeah, but it just fills up. It's amazing.
crack a few eggs to make an omelet is what they say.
That's what they say.
Yes. Well, I was going to say before we wrap up here that my least favorite part from the Odyssey and the most
Yeah,
unbelievable part for me was the fact, and don't get me wrong, I love Ludwig Göransson, the guy who did the music for it,
yeah,
but the fact that the siren was a saxophone, the sound of the
dude.
siren was a saxophone playing, most unbelievable part for me. I'm like, this is not getting anyone tempted to
Count me
swim up
out.
to them. Like, this is so unbelievable. But besides
Listen,
that,
EG.
I did enjoy the score, but I'm like, this isn't tempting anyone to go. Like, oh, I hear a saxophone. I'm gonna jump off this ship and swim to my death. But
That ain't
yeah,
happening.
oh well. I knew you'd appreciate that, so
Yeah, I
had
do.
to.
You know how I feel about the sax. I won't go too hard because we have people that play it,
Yes, we do, and we
and I'm
love them.
grateful for them. We love them.
But now we know they're sirens. I guess I don't know.
That's what we should look out for them.
Evan
Yeah,
Sirianni, we're watching you.
we're watching you, buddy.
Yes. All right.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
coming up next week, we have the Gospel Rescued, and it's actually the end of our sermon series here. So we're finally wrapping up the first volume of Acts, and at some point we'll be back. Don't worry, not exactly sure when, but we will. Volume
Go ahead.
2 coming soon. You never know. It's like a band. Might be a year, might be longer. Who knows? But it's coming back. You can
In
trust us on that.
negotiations with the label right now.
Yes. Yep. But we're going to be going through Acts 12, 1 through 19. And I'd say most importantly, it's Pastor Nick's first sermon here at ULC. So make sure you're here Sunday, tuning in, whatever it is. We're excited to have him preach here for us at ULC. And then we'll have him here on Digging Deeper as well. And then really looking forward to that one with him.
Be awesome, man. I'm excited for his first digging deeper. He's going to love it. And you all are going to love
Absolutely.
it, most importantly.
Very much. All right. Well, make sure to stick around for Amy and Nate. They'll be here on the other side of this. But for now, thanks for tuning in and God bless.
Ciao.
Hey,
Hello.
so glad to be here again talking about this past week's gathering. Loved the message that Pastor Gabe gave us regarding Barnabas, especially, and how he was Mr. Encourager. I thought that was so fun.
Yes, the exhorter of men.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of the difference between, there was a quote there that highlighted the Paul versus the Barnabas, and just how there was something about, Paul's this kind of madman on fire for God, firing off here and there, and also getting into some arguments with some people, and Barnabas being kind of this kind of peacemaker, and encourager, binding together, and how he makes the world. There's something about Paul making bringing the gospel out, and Barnabas, people like him, making the world worth living in.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah,
I loved it, and I loved that it was just through these ordinary things. It wasn't, like you said, this crazy thing. It was literally in the day to day. And I also loved when Pastor Gabe shared this idea of, like, when we're walking into a room, that we need to ask God, where are you working here? And how can I be a part of it? I thought that was so beautiful.
See what you did there, because our song, You Walk With Me.
Yeah.
And God walking with us as we walk into the room.
Yeah.
Really, we're trying to be in step with the Spirit and with what God's doing, and in the ordinary ways, so
that's the song.
That's our song for today.
It fits perfect. In the ordinary, in the day to day, Father, find me searching for everywhere you're moving all around me. In the ordinary, in the day to day, Father, find me searching for everywhere you're moving all around me. Hallelujah, you walk with me. Glory, glory, I still believe. You are Father, you are friend, you walk with me, you walk with me. Praise the Lord.
Thanks, Amy and Nate, for walking us through the sermon last week, and then also playing for us You Walk With Me. Really enjoyed hearing that from you guys, as always. As I already mentioned, coming up ahead next week will be the end of our Acts Volume 1 sermon series, The Gospel Rescued, Acts 12, 1 through 19, and Pastor Nick. So we'll see you on Sunday with Pastor Nick preaching, and he'll be with us here on Digging Deeper as well. But for now, have a blessed rest of your week.